Hi, my name is Linda Ehlers. I started doing stained glass back in 1986 as a hobby when I graduated from college. And then when I moved to Colorado in 1994, I started making a few stained glass windows for neighbors and started teaching, and it just took off from there. So now I've been teaching quite a long time. I do stained glass, fused glass, mosaics, wire wrapping, stepping stones, all kinds of glass art. So this video is going to be on an introductory to stained glass. So we're going to do an 11 by 14 inch beginner project of 15 pieces. And I'm going to go through all the steps. I'm going to teach you and show you me working on the process as it goes. So I'll cut glass, then I'll start grinding and fitting the pieces, then I'll wrap the pieces in a copper tape, which is called copper foil. I'll solder the piece together, I'll frame it in metal and put hooks on, and you'll be able to see me do all those steps. So if you look down here, this is the project we're going to be working on. It's 11 by 14 inches, and it's actually 15 pieces. So one thing you're going to do is we're going to be doing the copper foil methods of stained glass, and there's also the lead cane method. But when you do copper foil, you want relatively thin lines. These are about 1/16 of an inch. And I like to use this Staedtler fine marking pen. So it's got an F on the end, so a super fine or with an S on the end will work. But if you blow up a pattern from a book, you'll need to retrace it in this thinner pen so that you have these thinner lines. This leaves just enough room for the copper foil to add to your glass. Then once you draw the lines, then you're going to number the pieces. So if you look here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but no 8. And there's a reason for that. We're going to be making pattern pieces out of clear transparency, and when you flip the 8 over, it looks the same upside down and right side up, so we skip 8. And then also 1 and 11 look the same upside down, so I do add tops and bottoms to the 1 and 11 so you can tell the difference. You'll also want your border lines on your project, and you'll also want an extra inch of space around the border to make your jig. Okay, so once you finish your pattern, you're going to run it through a copier machine and make some clear transparencies. These are 11 by 17 transparencies. I found these online. Most transparencies are 8.5 by 11. But you'll notice that one transparency doesn't fit your pattern, so you might have to copy your pattern multiple times. And if you look here, we've got full pattern pieces on 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9. But 5 is a partial, so I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to cross these out. So when you get your transparency from me, I will have crossed out the pattern pieces. So the same here, I don't want to use the 6 or the 4 on this pattern piece. Okay, so those are your transparencies. We're going to cut those up in a minute. I'm going to go back to your pattern, and I'm going to make a jig. And that's what you're going to be working in and cutting your pieces and fitting in the jig. So I'm using particle board. It's relatively flat. You don't want to use plywood. I like to use particle board and nail sticks around the edges versus other options like the Morton system, which uses push pins, which aren't as secure. So I like this method better. So you're going to put your pattern on the board, and you're going to waterproof the pattern. And I'm going to use Duralar to do that, but any kind of clear plastic like Mylar or even transparencies you tape together will work. But this is Duralar. Comes in a roll that's 40 inches tall, so you can cut pretty big pieces out of it. You want to waterproof the pattern because you'll be cutting and grinding your pieces using a wet grinder, and the glass will get wet. And if the glass gets the paper pattern wet, the paper will actually dry and crinkle, and your glass won't sit flat. So you want to waterproof your pattern. Then I'm going to use sticks to hold the pattern down. I use sticks. My husband's a woodworker, so he just threw some wood together and cuts up scraps, but you can use burring strips. And I'm using wire nails, so you can use any kind of nail to hold your sticks in that don't go through the board. You don't want sticks going through the bottom, and then if you move the board, it scratches the table. So, but if you look here, none of these sticks are exactly the right size. They're all a little bit too long, and that's okay. If you have to cut every stick exactly the right size, it's going to take you a lot of time. So I have extra long sticks, so what I'm going to do here is this first, I'm going to kind of go around in the clockwise direction. And this first stick is going to start below this pattern line. So you're going to bring it in a little and it'll hang over the next edge. So then the next piece can hang over this edge, then you bring this piece can hang over the next edge, and this last one can hang over the last edge. So none of these pieces have to be the right size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up my black line, so I'm going to start nailing this in and cover up the black line. So sometimes your sticks may not be straight, so you may have to push them in a little in or out to get them where you want them, and use quite a few nails. I do some of my straight edge patterns on AutoCAD. When I do that, I actually have to put the sticks on the outside of the line to get the right width on the edge, but most of the time you're covering up your black lines. When you take my classes, the jigs are out on loan. So you pay for copies and the plastic and the Duralar and the transparencies, but the jigs are out on loan and you just return them when you're done. So what I like to do once I'm done here is I have little stickers, and I'll put a return jig to GGG, Great Glass Galore is my business name, when you're done with the jig. Okay, so that's your jig. Let's go back to the transparencies, and I'll explain a little more about those. We'll start with this one. So these are going to end up being pattern pieces that you're going to use to put on the glass and cut the glass. So I'm going to cut out a 1, I'm going to cut out a 2, I'm going to cut out a 3. Then I can put 1 on my brown glass for a trunk. I can put 2 on the green glass for my green glass. So you have to cut all these out. And when you do that, you want to cut out all this black line in the middle because you want that space left for foil. So when I do this, if I'm cutting number 1, I'm going to cut on my right but your left side of the line so that there's no line left on 1. But then when I cut number 2, I'm going to cut that little piece of black out, so you get a little sliver of black that comes out. So usually your first homework is to cut out these plastic transparencies pieces. The other thing I like to do is I like to use these little Fiskars scissors. So usually sewing scissors are easier than big, large scissors. So if you want, I can go ahead and I'll cut out number 2 so you can see that. And I like to use these transparencies because you're running them through a copier, so they come out more exact than if you try and trace your pattern pieces by hand. It also makes them waterproof, so if you do put them on your wet glass, they don't crinkle, so you can use them over and over again. And in addition, they're see-through, so you can pick out which part of your glass you'd like to use. When you lay them on top of your glass, you can say, maybe your glass is 2 colors, like red and yellow. And you can say, I want the more red section. You can see it. You can see the grain of your glass. So that also helps with these plastic transparencies. So now you can kind of see where these are still areas that are a little too big. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut out those little areas. That's what makes these little scissors a little easier. So you can see that's getting pretty close. Maybe a little more down here. Because whatever black you don't forget to cut off, the piece you'll trace on your glass, you'll cut your glass out, and then it'll be a little too big here and here, and then I'll have to grind more. But your first step will be to cut out a pattern piece for each number, and again, you're going to skip partials. Sometimes when you do a bigger pattern, you're going to end up with pieces that don't fit on one transparency, so you will have to tape those together. Frequently, when I'm doing a very busy pattern, I will actually mark. I'll circle ones I want to save on a piece. Or I might even say, oh, I might put an arrow where I need to tape the next piece to it, things like that. So that's it for the introductory video. Next, we're actually going to go to the cutting video.